Hey guys, I'm Ich. I'm a professional sports videographer, and today I am testing a camera lens that, if everything goes according to plan, could very well become my new go-to lens on game day. And if you remember, I already teased the fact that this video was coming probably about a month ago now, when I released a previous video about the content of my game day filming kit. I've got the 18 to 200 millimeters. It's pretty much my go-to. That's what I do most of my filming with. A quick thing I want to bring up before we keep going is that I was working on testing this new lens, but as soon as I got this lens, that's when COVID started, so I never really got a chance to properly test it in a sports environment. So here we are. Professional sports are slowly going back to normal around here, so today I finally get a chance to test my mystery lens at a soccer game between the Melbourne Victory and the Brisbane Roar. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into it. A lot of professional sports videographers were actually quite surprised by my current choice of go-to lens on game day, which is this 18 to 200 millimeter. And I know it's not the most high quality glass going around. It's not even close. In fact, the highest quality glass used by most videographers when filming sports is the 70 to 200 f2.8, which is a great lens, great glass. Sony makes one, Canon makes a couple actually, and yeah, they're all amazing, and they are also all very expensive. I, on the other hand, use this $700 lens about 95% of the time, and this 75 to 300 mil just for those few shots where I need the extra zoom range. But today, I'm testing a lens that combines the advantages of both these lenses into one. The Tamron 16 to 300 mil. And by the end of this video, you'll see why a $600 lens like this is way more valuable to me than the much more expensive options used by most of the professionals.
All the vlogs like in America with all like, I don't know, I watch the surfing ones and they're all like, start the music.
So I'm in the photographers and videographers room right now, and my goal today will be to compare this Tamron 16 to 300 mil lens that I'm shooting with right now to my usual go-to, which is the Canon 18 to 200. I'm going to compare the quality of the footage, of course. I'm also going to compare the autofocus. And lastly, I'm going to compare the zoom range, which obviously the Tamron will win, but it's still good to sort of have a look and see the actual difference between the two. So let's go outside. Okay, so let's take a minute here to break down everything we just watched, because today is the day after the game. I had a chance to look at the footage properly, and it's extremely hard even for me to see any difference between the two lenses. So I can only imagine how impossible it would be for you guys with the added YouTube compression. So let's just talk about it for a second. When it comes to the first test, the image quality, if I pick an image that has a lot of details, a lot of movements, it's the same for both in terms of quality. Even if we zoom in 300% more in post, it's still exactly the same in my opinion. So now let's quickly touch on my second point of comparison, which was the autofocus. That was one for me that was very difficult to film yesterday and try to do it in a way that would be visually interesting and also obvious for you guys. So I probably dropped the ball on this one, to be honest. But basically, the results are in, and I find that the Tamron is slightly better than the Canon in the autofocus category for one very specific reason, which is that when both of them lose focus for whatever reason, the Tamron will basically keep its focus where it is until it can pick up the subject again, which means that you might go a second here or there where you're slightly out of focus, but that's about it. Where the Canon, on the other hand, when it loses focus, it just starts rack focusing up and down until, by some type of miracle, it figures out who it's supposed to be focusing on. So for that reason, I'm giving the Tamron lens a win in the autofocus category. Now, let's have a look at the difference between the 200mm zoom range and the 300mm zoom range. So you guys can see what the 100mm difference roughly looks like on screen. Most people will probably think that it's not that much and it's not worth sort of buying a new lens if they already have a lens that goes up to 200, which I probably agree. For me, that extra 100mm, obviously, like I said at the beginning of this video, is very specific to certain scenarios. One of them being if I want to do like a really tight shot of someone's feet, for example, like dribbling or kicking a ball, that extra 100mm is going to get me there, where sometimes the 200 might get me that awkward sort of, I'll get the crotch in the shot, or I'll get that weird sort of 3/4 of a leg sort of action going, which is not that great and nowhere near as impactful. And another situation where that extra 100mm can be very helpful is when I'm filming fans. If I really want to zoom in on a fan and make sure I get all the emotion out of his face, I want to be as tight as possible. And especially if there's not that many fans at that game, you don't really want to show empty seats. It's not great, and doesn't make the game look very fun when you can clearly see that no one's there. So being able to zoom in to avoid the empty seats around people is always a plus. By now, I'm sure you've realized that I am pretty happy with the Tamron as far as comparing it with the Canon that I was using before. So yes, I am definitely making the switch. That means I won't have to carry that extra 75 to 300mm lens with me anymore. So one less lens to worry about. But let's go back to the statement I made earlier about how a lens like this is way more valuable to me than a more professional 70 to 200mm f2.8. First of all, when people use words like professional when describing a lens, all they mean is that it's a higher quality glass, which in this case, the higher end models are definitely higher quality. I'm not going to debate that. On the other hand, I'm going to explain to you guys why, as a professional sports videographer myself, versatility is way more important than quality. All my videos either end up on a big screen in a stadium or on social media. And in both cases, the resolution is not good enough for the average viewer to see the difference between a high quality glass and a more average one. For example, on the Jumbotrons, when you're watching a video, you're so far away from the screen that you'll never notice that the resolution of the screen is actually not even as good as the one on your television at home. So whether I'm using a $2,000 lens or a $600 lens, you're not going to see it. And when it comes to social media, it's sort of the same thing. Yes, if you're watching a video that I uploaded on YouTube in 4K and you're watching it in 4K at home on your TV, you're definitely going to notice a difference between a video shot on a $2,500 lens and a video shot on this one. But if you're watching a video on your phone, or if you're watching any video uploaded to Facebook or Instagram, platforms where the compression is even worse than YouTube, unless you're a videographer yourself that's looking specifically for image sharpness, you're never going to notice any difference between the lenses. So to me, because I'm not a huge gearhead, when I'm buying equipment, I go specifically for the things that I need. And image sharpness, to me, is not one of them. The other sort of misconception, in my opinion, about this lens is the fact that because it's got a variable aperture, people tend to think that it's more trouble than it's worth, because compared to the more professional lenses that are set at a 2.8 aperture, so which means that you can zoom in and out and your aperture will stay the same, it'll always be at 2.8, where with this one, when you zoom out, you're at 3.5 minimum, but as you zoom in, the aperture, the minimum aperture sort of gradually goes up, and basically when you fully zoomed in, the minimum aperture is 6.3. Some people see that as a huge issue because that means they'll have to play with the ISO all the time, but personally, all I do is I set the aperture straight up at 6.3 from the beginning, which means that whether I'm zoomed out, zoomed in, doesn't matter, the aperture will always be at 6.3. So no, I never actually use the available 3.5 aperture, but to be honest, I don't really need it. The same way, I don't think anyone really needs a 2.8 aperture when filming sports. 2.8 is great when filming interviews, it's great when filming fans probably, to be honest, but when you're filming game action, if you're filming at 2.8, that means that, especially in sports where there's always sort of 4 or 5 guys around each other, one of them is going to be in focus and the other 4 are not. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, most of the time that's going to be a problem. Where if you're filming at 6.3, that means that everybody that's sort of close together are all going to be in focus and you're not going to miss anything. And trust me, if you're filming from the sidelines and you're zooming in to get guys that are 100 feet away from you, you're still going to get those blurry backgrounds. Like, just because you're at 6.3 doesn't mean that you're losing all that depth of field, because there's still a lot of distance between you and your subject, and more importantly, there's even more distance between the subject and the background. So you're still going to get those blurry backgrounds. It's still going to look good. I promise you that. Also, filming at a 2.8 aperture, if you're using the autofocus function, is going to make your life a living hell. Because if you've got 4 or 5 players in the shot, the autofocus is always going to go from one player to the other, which means that you're never going to have one player constantly in focus, and it's just going to be very messy in terms of who we're supposed to pay attention to. And if you've got a player doing a great play and all of a sudden the focus goes on the defender, you just ruined your shot. So by having something that makes everyone in the same group sort of always in focus, it guarantees you that no matter what happens, you're going to get the shot that you need. And lastly, as I've been saying a few times already, versatility is always my #1 priority. I want to be able to get any shot from anywhere at any time. So a 70 to 200 mil for me, I don't know if you've noticed in my footage, but I'm about maybe 10-15 feet away from the sidelines. So if a player is coming towards me, I'm not going to be able to film in full body. It's going to be too close, especially that I usually film with a C100 at games. So this is a crop sensor. So add a crop sensor to a 70mm lens. I'm lucky if the guy is 10 feet away to get a mid shot or something. So for example, if I'm in the corner, a team scores a goal and then the players start running towards me, that to me in soccer is the money shot. That's what I want. This is gonna make my video. So if I can't get that shot because my lens doesn't allow it, I'm screwed. There's no point. Like, why am I using this lens if I can't even get my money shot? The other thing I want to do once I capture that goal is quickly turn around and get the fans' reaction, because again, in a small stadium, the good thing is that the fans are literally 10 feet behind me. So I can capture the goal and quickly turn around, zoom out, and then put my camera straight in the fans' face, and they'll just happily give me these crazy faces, this expression of bliss, of happiness, and have both shots in my edit to play with. Because at the end, as I said, I see myself much more as a storyteller than a technician. So I'm not trying to get all the best shots in the world. I'm trying to get all the shots that I need to tell the story of the game that I'm filming. So if I'm missing goals, if I'm missing fan reactions, if I'm missing any type of things because I don't have the right lens for that moment, then what's the point? What am I doing here? Like, I'm not taking photos, I'm telling a story. I need to capture everything. So this is why I will always use this over a 70-200, no matter how great the quality of that other lens is. In saying that though, if you're filming at a football stadium, for example, and you're so far back that at a 70mm minimum zoom range, you can still capture everyone in front of you, everything that you need is still within your range and you're not gonna miss anything, then by all means, go for it. Like, this is the highest quality glass. Use it, go nuts, film everything, have fun. But if you're limiting yourself because you're prioritizing quality, that's where I think, in my opinion, you're making a huge mistake. Anyway, on that note, if I've convinced you that this is the way to go, there is a link in the description where you can get one of these for yourself. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. My name is E, and I hope I earned the privilege of your time.